Hello, good day. So today we are going to just be talking about a brief introduction into Python for those who don't really know much about Python, and for those who are looking at starting in Python programming. So I'm just going to be giving you just a brief things in programming and some other things like that. So in this tutorial, I'll be making use of Visual Studio Code. Please make sure you have your Python. You've already installed Python in your system. I might drop a link in the description, but just in case you don't see it, you can just go over to YouTube and search how to install Python using VS Code, Visual Studio Code. That's the name of this code editor you are seeing on your screen right now. So I don't want to waste much time. Let's jump into the first step. So first thing you want to do is that you want to create a new file. If you are using VS Code, you can hover around the name of the folder you are currently in. You should see this plus sign here, or you come to File, New File, then to open this thing for you. So once it just gives you this new file, then you can decide to save the first time, and then you can now type out the name. For this one, I'll be using intro.py, and I save it. So we have created a Python file to be working on right now. So our code editor knows that we're working in a Python file. So first thing we want to learn today is what we call variables. So variables are just labels for storing information. For example, you might give the name of a person, Augustine, just like mine. You might tell someone's name is Comfort, Daniel, or the rest, but it's just one person. But how you use to identify that person is through what we call a name. So we can also call variables as names that we'll use in our code. For now, just ignore this thing I wrote here. I'll explain it in just some few seconds. So a variable can take note of anything. Let's say if I want to store a number somewhere, I can just write num is equal to 10. We've created a variable, and the name of the variable is num, and the name of the value that we put inside that variable is 10. So the way it's done is variable name equal to the value. So it's variable equal to value. Get me? We could also have other variables like this. We can say name. So my name is Augustine, and I'll briefly explain why we have this. So for us to be able to see our variables, we want to simply use what we call a print statement. Now a print statement, or a print function, yes, a print function, what it does is that it displays a result for you. So I might want to say print num, and what happens is that once I say this print num, and I should save this and run it. Just save it and run it. Don't mind what you see here. As you can see over here, it gives me 10. Now you can see num gave it 10 here, and if I should change the value of this num to maybe 45, and I save it and I should rerun it, you see me, I get 45. So anywhere the code says num, it checks the value of num at that particular position and gives you the results. Same thing with name. We have the name, you can save it and you run it. Yes, so that is name. So this is it for variables. The way variables are in Python, it has some conventions or some rules that we use in naming variable. First things first, your variable can start with a number. So if I say one person equal to maybe 1, as you can see, my code is already giving me a sign that this doesn't work. So the way our variable should be, proper naming convention of variables, it must start with a letter or an underscore. So your variable starts with a letter, I'll just say starts with a letter, or underscore. And also your variable can only contain letters, underscore, and a number. Now it's having variables can only have yes, can only have letters, underscore, a number. But when starting, you cannot have a number. You can decide to have an underscore. That one works. You see, it doesn't give me any issue, and I can come here and print underscore person. And if I should save this code and I should run it, we should get 1 there. So you see, this exactly works. If I want to add a number to this, I would be like person 1. This will exactly work because it has a number, but the number, it doesn't start with a number. It doesn't start with a number. So another thing, your variables can't contain symbols at all. They won't work even if it starts or is in the function. So if I should say vk this, you will get an error somewhere. Maybe I say is equal to u, and I try to print out vk $fm, and I save this. It's really giving me an error on the screen. But when I run this, you are going to see syntax error. This is an invalid syntax. What we mean syntax is that it's not the proper way of writing it. So in this kind of situation, I would just remove the proper way. So your variables cannot contain symbol. I will add that. Variables cannot contain symbols. Sorry. So all these are under variable rows. So these are variable rows, so you cannot contain symbols. But now you see I only have 2 letters here, and this will work exactly. You can see it gave me u. So now I'm going to explain something called data types. It's a concept in programming. Data types. For now, ignore this. This hash sign you always see me use is what we call a comment. A comment is just used to explain a particular block of code. For example, there are a lot of developers and everybody have their style of writing codes, but in a situation where you want someone to be able to understand what you wrote easily, the best thing for you to do is to make use of comments. So in Python, the way we write comments, as you can see, anywhere I write the comment, if I should comment out person 1, it changes color. That's to tell you that this is not, once you see it starts with the hash sign, it changes color and it doesn't run with the code. Comments don't run with the code. It's only meant for the programmer like you and me to be able to see. Anybody who's using the output of the code will not be able to see a comment in the code. So the way you can write your comments is that you can either start with a hash sign and write something in there. You can write gibberish, or I just say a comment. This is what we call a single line comment. Pardon me, a single line comment. In a situation where I want to write a comment with multiple lines, what I can do is to use either 3 quotes like this, and I can write my comment beside. This is a multi-line comment. So if I should run this code, this would absolutely run. It won't have issues in the process. Why is my mouse misbehaving? So you see everything runs. It doesn't have any issue. It's not even observing this particular place here. Oh, my mouse is misbehaving. So I'm just going to switch. I'm going to move this somewhere else. So just don't observe the mouse at the moment. I'll be using my keyboard only. Sorry, give me a minute, and I've solved that issue now. I just disconnected my mouse completely. Okay, so yeah, so this is a multi-line comment. You can either use single quotes or double quotes 3 times. 1, 2, 3. You see, my code editor automatically adds for me, and within those single quotes and double quotes, in between them, you can now write another multi-line comment. So that's it for comments. I'm just going to remove this out so we can go back to what we're doing. So yeah, we're talking about data types. So in Python, we have 3 data types. We have what we have the integer. I'm going to just say int. We have what we call a string. I'm just going to say this. We have floats. We have Boolean. There are other ones, but these are the basic ones for you to understand at the moment. So just the same way that, let's say, information or data, the same way in the real life world, we have numbers and we also have letters. In the programming world, we have numbers and we also have letters in the programming world. There are a lot of numbers, there are letters, there are different ways we perceive information. There's dates, there are different things. all of them are different types of data that we get when we, in the real life world, letter, numbers, and the rest. And in programming, we also have that. So when we talk about integers, example of integers is numbers. So remember when I say num at the beginning is equals to 20, a whole number like this is an integer. So this, also take note, you can also write a comment at the end of the code. So this is an integer or int, you might see both. Yeah, those are integers. Integers are whole numbers, whether be 20, 1, 5, just anything that is a whole number is an integer, right? So we also have number 2, we have strings. So remember that time I wrote the name is equal to Augustine. As you can see, this is what we call a string. String is simply letters. Strings are letters, or a string is a letter. Yes, in the programming world, it's letter, and we can denote a string, or we can say something is a string by using either single quotes, by surrounding it with single quotes, or double quotes. So this is a string at the moment. Give me a minute, I'll be back. Yeah, so these are strings, single quotes or double quotes.
Wait a minute.
So let's create another variable and use the quote that I say Chinedu. Yeah, this is a string. So give me a minute, I'm going to be back as soon as possible. Okay, back to where we stopped. So we were talking about strings, and I mentioned that strings can be used in either single quotes or double quotes. So if we just print this out, we print out name, comma, yeah, you could also do this, you could do print out name, comma, this, and if you run the code, you should get Augustine and Chinedu. So I'll remove this print vk, that's what made that u to come out. So these are strings. Yeah, so this is examples of strings. The next one that we're talking about would be floats. So for floats, we're talking about decimal point numbers. For example, is this recording? Okay, yes, it's recording. Sorry about that. So when we're talking about decimal point numbers, let's say for example, one of the popular decimal point numbers is pi. Pi, not pi crypto, please. Pi, we have pi as 3.14. So in a situation like this, this is called a float. These are decimal numbers. What makes them different from what's the name, from integer, is the presence of the decimal point. So even let's say we have random num, just a variable, random number, or let's just call it random, not that the variable name actually matters. If we should have 10.0, this is still considered, let's still consider the float. So if I do print, random, we do this and we hit enter, we get 10.0. Now let me show you a trick I used to be able to, it's not a trick, it's actually a function that you can use to know the data type. Now the name of that function is type. So let's say a db, I'll call a dt, that's a data type, is type, is a function. So you write type first, you open your brackets. In programming we call brackets parenthesis. This is what we call brackets. We don't just call it brackets. So inside our parenthesis, or inside the brackets, we will write the name of the variable, which is random. So we'll just print adt. So if we should do this and we should run our print statement, you can see it will say class float. You see it's telling us that this variable inside this type, or we could even, to make things simpler, we could just print out the type directly. We don't need to create a variable. So inside here we'll just run the print statement and it gave us still class float. As you can see, this float is telling you that this is a float. If we change the random to pi, it should still give us floats. We change it to yep, which is a string. We save it, we run it, you see it gives us str. In Python, anywhere you see str, it simply means string. If we should clean this and we should write num, we should get int, which means int. So this is telling you that the data type there is called an integer. Now there's still one more data type we haven't done. That data type is called the Boolean. Boolean simply means true or false. You can use it in a condition. For example, let's say is today. Maybe we are checking for whether the date we have is the current date. So we can simply write Booleans always starts with capital letter. You can write true. Sorry, this is Boolean. We could also write is not today, and I can say false. So true, false, these are all Booleans. So if I'm to print this to be able to see whether this is a Boolean, and I run this, you can see it said bool, that's B-O-O-L. Bool means Boolean. Now this will tell you that okay, you are making use of Boolean variables. The variable is a Boolean at that particular point. So this is it with data types. Data types are not difficult. I won't even call them difficult at all. They are quite easy for us to use. So now let's do some little practical. I'm just going to come down here and let's just talk more on integers. What can we do with integers? One thing that we can do with integers is all this basic arithmetic like addition. Integers in real life are like numbers, and numbers, not number, are like numbers. They are numbers. So we can do addition, division, subtraction, multiplication, all those things we can do with them. So let's just create like two variables. Let's call num1 is equal to, let's say, 20. And we have num2, which is equal to 5. Sorry, not 55. So if I decide to print num1, which is the first one, plus num2, and I should run the state, sorry, let me comment out this print statement so it doesn't display both results at the same time. I should run this. You see, I get down here, I get 25, which 20 plus 5 will definitely give you 25. We can also do minus. Let me write it under print num1 minus num2. So if I should save this, I should run it, we get 15. You see, the first one, which was the plus, we got 25, and the second one we got 15 down here. Let's do more examples. We also have print num1 divided. In Python, this is a division sign, the slash. I call it forward slash, actually forward slash. Call it num2. So I can decide to run this. Run. You see, we get 4.0. Now, one thing in Python is that whenever you do a straight division like this, you begin to get 4.0. And remember, I said anything with a decimal point is a float number. That means, yeah, it's a float, not an integer. So we can confirm that this is a float by using that type function I told you about. So let's check the type. As you can see, division of two integers gave us a float. So there is one more type of division called an integer division. So up here we got a float. Now you might not know why this is necessary, but in future it's good to always have your data types set. This is what we'll call an integer division. The two forward slash together will give you, it won't give you the point, rather to just give you your integer straight up, or to round it off to the nearest figure. So as you can see, for this we had, let's call this a normal division, and for this let's call this an integer division. I forgot, and it's not integer division, but for now, just for your easiness, we'll call this an integer division. So this one gives us an integer, and for us to actually know it's an integer, by seeing it here we can know it's an integer, but for extra confirmation, let's add this type and let's run it. So you can see it gave us class int, which means we did it correctly. So these are some things that you can do with integers. You can add, subtract, and the rest. Same thing with floats. You can make use of a float. Let's just say a float. Yes, one more thing. I forgot to add that you can't, there are some reserved words in Python. For example, words of functions, data types, and the rest. You can't make use of them. Like I can't name a variable str. I can't say str is equal to maybe, sorry, I can't say a variable, let's say print. I can't say print is equal to 5. If I say print, you are going to get an error. So if I should run this, you see, it tells you object is not callable. What happens, why this is so, is because whenever you do this, it begins to mess with Python's workings, the inner workings of Python. So you don't want to name it with some reserved words. How you can be able to know some reserved words in Python is that whenever you type it, something like this, you begin to notice it changes color. So anytime you're typing a variable, you just want it to be white for this. If you're using something else, it might be other colors. But once you see it changes color, let me think of another reserved word. We've already used print. I said you ask, so ask should be color. Except it's a reserved word in Python. So those ones will also change the color. So those are some things you want to observe, from nitty-gritty things that you want to always observe whenever we are making use of what's the name? Yeah, making use of Python. So the last thing, just talking about this, I just don't remember the way we find pi in Python. 22 divided by 7. That's the real math formula of printing of pi. So let's run this now. Let's see what we get. So you can see the full figure of pi. That's 3.1428 blah blah blah. 3.142. That's what I normally knew when I was in secondary school. Not that I was that good in maths, but I just had to know it for the sake of passing. Yeah, so this is integers. Let's now go into a little bit of strings. So what I'm going to just do is comment out all these places. Remember, your comments doesn't run along with the code. It's meant for the programmer only. It's not executed in the code. So if I should run this, I won't get any results out here because it's not part of the code. So when we talk about strings, let's say name is equal to Augustine. There are some few kind of manipulations we can do with strings. Let's say I call this first name, first underscore name. Yes, thank God for this example. You cannot have spaces in your variable. Nope, they don't work that way. Your variables cannot have spaces, please. So you can use an underscore to represent the space. That one works very well. So we have first name, first underscore name. We have this thing, we also have last underscore name. So for me, this is my last name. Easy. So in strings, there's something called concatenation. Concatenation. It's just a programming term for adding two strings together, putting two strings together. For example, if I say print, or if I say full underscore name is equal to first name, first underscore name plus last underscore name, and I decide to print out full name, full underscore name. Now this is what we just did here is to join the two strings together. So what happens is that full name begins ends up having, you see, he gave me Augustine AZ. But the thing here is that you see that this word over here, down here, sorry if it's disturbing your screen, but that word down there actually doesn't have any space in between, which is wrong. So a hack that we normally use for this is by just maybe we can decide to add a space, maybe in the variable definition, we decide to add a space at the end of the first variable that will be at the left. When we run it, we get the space, or we add a space at the beginning of the last variable, which will still give us the desired result. So that's concatenation for Python, just using the plus sign. So let me just reverse this to the way it was, and I'll comment this. So this is concatenation. We also have something else. I've forgotten the name of it. I'm so sorry for that. So we have something else. It's just like repetition of a string. Let's say we have let's say last name, last underscore name. We say times 3. Now, some people will be like, "Whoa, what the hell are you doing? I don't even understand what you're writing." But just be patient. Let me run it out so that you see the output. Programming is more about practical. So we've gotten the output. Let me raise it up a bit so you can see it's better. So you can see the output here says easy, easy, easy. So this, whenever you do that repetition, that multiplication of a string, it just repeats it, and it repeats it by the number. How many times you repeat it depends on the number you put here. So if I should say 5, we get easy, 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 easy 5 times. So that's just the repetition of it. There are other things you can do. So one last thing before the end of this video is this. Strings can be anywhere. This is what I mean. Whenever you're declaring your integer, you don't want to put a string here. Do you see this? This looks like a number, but if I should print out its type, let's say print type, that's the data type. I should remember I told you the print function. If I should print this out, you see it gives you str, telling you that this is not a number, this is a string. But some will be like, how does this affect my code? Now, let me show you this. So I'll do real number. Let's do real underscore number, which is a string, an integer. Let's say 10. If I should multiply a real number by 2, an integer number, real number, which is an integer number, by 2, and I should run this, I will get 20. Now this will be normal multiplication, but if I am multiplying a string number by 2, it's going to look at it as a string, and it's going to do what? Repetition. So instead of you getting 20, you are going to be getting 10, 10. And that's ridiculous. Imagine you are doing a calculator and you do 10 times 2, you begin to get 10, 10. You'll be, what the hell? That's like 1010. How is that possible? So instead of it doing this thing, is repeating it. And same thing with addition. It looks at it, because whenever you're using a string and you add 2 strings together, it no longer looks at it as a, what's the name? It no longer looks at it as a number, but looking at it as a string. Okay, this one actually gave us an error. Yeah, so you always want to have a clear definition of your data type. Let your numbers be integer, let your strings be strings. Yeah, so if I should say a string, I should write it without actually, if I should create a string without actually putting my single quotes and double quotes, it also gives me an error to tell me AUGH is not defined. That is because the only words that are allowed to be without quotes are either variables or reserved words. Those are the words that are allowed to be without quotes. Maybe like class, those are reserved words. You can put them without quotes, but you can't assign it to a variable sometimes. Actually, you can in some instances, but that won't be applicable for now. So we've done a lot. And again, pardon me, I will say one last thing one more time. Let's do what we call type conversion. What type conversion does is converting integers to floats, converting strings to integers, just changing from one data type to another. That's type conversion for you. So remember, I will make use of this example. Remember, we had real number and we had this other variable before. I'm just sure str num, and then I'm going to put a string. So in a situation like this, I don't get what I need. And I want to convert this str num to a real number. What I can do, there's a function called integer. Now the integer converts from convert a string to integer, convert a float to integer. What else? Yes, those are the two basic things. So for example, let's say I just declare a random variable. The way we convert it is using an int function, and inside that int function I pass in the the thing I want to convert to a number. So if I should print out a Python is case sensitive, by the way. Small a and capital A are two different things. I don't know why I'm just remembering that now. Sorry about that. Next time I'll make my videos as clean as possible for you, and I will cover everything step by step. So if I should do this now, I convert this to a number. We get 10. But how do we know that this 10 is now an integer? We use our type function. We are going to talk about function later on in another video. So you can see me now, it got class int for me. And one more thing, we can confirm it by doing it by multiplying it by 10. So if we get 100, it's correct, but if we get 1010, it's wrong. So we got 100, meaning that this is an integer. So we could also convert a float. I think I declared pi up there. I can say, okay, let's just write it again. Pi is equal to 3.14, and then I can do b is equal to int pi. So let me print out pi now. Now what happens here is that, sorry, not pi, I print out b, since b is the converted value of pi. Hope that didn't confuse you. What happens is that here it's still a string. It's still a float, but here, when we do this here, it becomes an integer, and then b gets it. So what happens is that during the conversion, Python rounds it off to the nearest figure. So when we run this thing now, and we run it, we should get only 3, because 3.14, if you round it off, it becomes 3 completely. Yes, so that's type conversion. And one more thing to note is this. When we are doing type conversion, we do not want, you want whatever is in our string to be numbers only. Because if I should say ABCD is not a number, and it can never be an integer. If I should run this for you, you are going to get an error. It's going to tell you invalid literal for int with base 10 ABCD, meaning that ABCD cannot be converted to an integer, even in the real life world. If I say Augustine, I can never convert Augustine to a number. In fact, Augustine cannot be a number except you form your own language. Yes, it cannot be a number. So that's it for this video. We've done a lot on variables, we've done a lot on data types, we've also seen different things we can do with strings, and the rest. So that's it for this video, guys. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. Just help my channel. It's just starting, but I really have a lot of value for you guys. So thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video.